This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
We're back and we're back in business. It is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles. I'm back. I'm currently, for people watching the video, I'm currently in an Airbnb in Sacramento, California. It has been a heck of a move. I don't need to get into details, but it's been a heck of a move. I still do not have a house. We're in contract though, Greg. We're hopefully like 2 weeks away. And the biggest difference is that my man Greg, he has done some he's done some work and he's lost some LBs.
That's how long
trim.
you've been away, man. You've been away so long that I lost a 12-year-old. So yeah, I mean, thank God. Nick is finally back from, apparently, I don't know if you've heard the jokes that I've been laying on you, but I've been like, apparently Sacramento is the Bermuda Triangle where there's no internet or anything because Nick just went out west and he dropped off the face of the earth, like Lewis and Clark, for crying out loud.
it's trying to put all these things together, cobble it all together. We got the microphone finally early this week or last week or whatever it was, and I was living in a hotel for a full month, and that Wi-Fi was dropping in and out, and then we thought we had it figured out. So again, I'm at an Airbnb now for the next couple of weeks, but we are ready to move into a house. We're in contract. We got the appraisal yesterday, so hopefully, fingers crossed, in the next week or two, I'll actually be in a house with my podcast room and the microphone I usually use with actual good headphones and all that stuff. But I am here. I'm pumped. You know, I couldn't wait to do this again. I've missed it. I haven't missed Greg, but I've missed the podcast. And
you sound like my wife.
I know Greg wants my quick thoughts on the end of the season before we start to talk about Josh Allen, and has Greg Bedard actually changed his tune on Josh Allen? We'll get to that in a couple of minutes, but first, my thoughts really quickly here. Really, Greg, it's stuff that we've talked about before the season kicked off, stuff we talked about early in the season. It came back to bite the Patriots. I mean, you look at the lack of a true number one receiver. I remember our conversation about Julio Jones. And listen, you nailed that puppy, by the way. Julio was not Julio. You saw it on film. You said it. You were right. We talked about OBJ. I thought OBJ was worth the risk. I'm not telling you it would have worked out as great as it worked out with LA, but I think the proof's in the pudding. The Patriots could have outbid anybody. They decided not to. I think that bit them in the ass eventually. So the lack of that true number one receiver who could get open when everything else was bothering this offense, Mac just didn't have that guy. And I read your stuff on Mac, and I agree with you. He just did not have that guy. Kendrick Bourne did great in his role, but that true number one bona fide cat who can get open, they didn't have it. We talked about the lack of speed. How many times over the last 2 years, Greg, you and I have talked about the lack of speed on this defense, especially at the second level linebacker. And you could really see it. When you're watching these playoff teams, even a team like the Bucs with White and David who got eliminated. I mean, go back. If anybody watched that Eagles-Bucs game, wild card round, look at those safeties and look at those linebackers for Tampa and how they completely snuffed out the run game of Philly, coming up downhill, making plays, sideline to sideline. I thought the lack of speed on the defensive end killed this team, especially with Hightower and Bentley. We talked about the secondary. It was thin. The Gilmore thing, you thought they should have traded Gilmore earlier than they did. And we talked about Jalen Mills being the number two guy. Neither you nor I were confident in the depth of this secondary. That hurt them. And the one thing I would say, though, the coaching issues. I mean, the last time we spoke, it felt like, this team, I think, went 1-4 since I've been gone. It felt like, right before I left, I believe they were coming off that Buffalo win on Monday night. And it felt like the coaching staff had righted the ship. And then we started to see some of the things we saw early in the season. And it was rather obvious to me that the coaching staff wasn't as good as it has been in past years. And I hope that they look at that this offseason. So those are just my quick general thoughts on what happened since I've been gone. Now, do you agree or disagree with my observations?
Well, no, I agree with them. I mean, like you said, a lot of the issues that came to the fore in the final 5 games of the season were stuff that we talked about all year. That we were like, all right, yeah, they've won 7 games. Well, what happens when they go up against a team with a good quarterback with multiple weapons and somebody that can spread them out and sort of expose their flaws? And then, offensively, you know that I was a guy who, and I'm still a guy. And some of it will take some study to determine in the offseason exactly what Mac Jones needs in terms of, is he like Tom Brady? Does he need a slot? And is that the priority? Or do you think that he's a better, downfield thrower or outside the numbers thrower, and you decide, all right, no, we need the stud on the outside, not on the inside. I'm going with it's the Patriots scheme. I think they need a slot that moves the chains, that somebody that Mac can depend on, every drive to say, all right, if I get into trouble, this guy I know is going to get open. You're Welker, you're Edelman, you're Troy Brown,
Right.
that type of guy. The one thing I'm curious to you, Nick, because you come from more of a Patriots fan perspective, and you've been watching from afar these last 5 games. Considering how the season went, 9-4, number 1 seed in the AFC, choked just about everything away down the stretch. Could only put another 50 burger on the Jaguars. In your opinion, how successful of a season do you think this was at the end of the day?
I think it's macro micro, right? I mean, I think when you look at the short term and what this season could have been, it's certainly disappointing that they ended the way they ended. And look, I think Buffalo, watching that game, and we'll get into it, Buffalo, Kansas City, it's rather obvious. Those are the 2 best teams in the AFC. And arguably, those are the 2 best teams in football. Now, maybe Cincy will shock the world on Sunday. But, I don't think they would have had much success against Buffalo anyway with this roster. Could they have played better and it could have been tighter? Certainly. But I don't think they're beating Buffalo. It was disappointing, some of the other things we saw. I thought the Colts game was a disaster, especially coming off of a bye. It's just ridiculous. I thought the Miami game was even more of a disaster. There's no excusing those 2 games. Those are just bad games. Those are games that are winnable. But big picture, I go back to what I said at the beginning of the year when we did our predictions and our thoughts. 11-6 is what I had. Get into the playoffs with a rookie quarterback is a really good first step. Maybe win a playoff game depending on matchup. Again, with the Bills, no shot. If they played better in Indy, if they played better in Miami, then they wouldn't have to face the Bills. They put themselves in that position. So it's disappointing that they failed at the end of the year and did not put themselves in better position, because I do think against some of those other teams, they might have had some more success. I even think against Cincinnati, they might have had maybe some more success.
Yep.
But when you look at it, the tail end of the year was a mess, and that's disappointing. But big picture, I feel like this team is close to what we thought they were going to be. 10 wins, 11 wins, get to the playoffs, kind of try to forget about 2020, put it in the rearview mirror. And the most important thing, Greg, to me is that they have a quarterback. And you were on this early in camp. You liked what you saw. There were the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs as we expected from a quarterback. But picture, I feel really good about Mac, and I think they have some pieces. But, they have a lot of work to do to go from where they are right now to where they ultimately need to be, which I know we'll talk about in a little bit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I largely agree with you. I mean, I do think, for them to fall behind collectively in their 4 losses down the stretch, I think it was a total of 84-14. I mean, that's just it's unexcusable. I mean, you just can't. Some promising things, but considering, Belichick went with a veteran roster again, brought back his guys. We knew it was going to be on defense. That defense was going to have to get this team turnovers, extra possessions. For them to come out of the gate against, Colts, big game. Buffalo at Gillette, huge game. Miami, down in Miami, huge game. Playoff game in Buffalo. To fall behind by 2 scores in every single game, like it's unprecedented for a Bill Belichick team, a Patriots team. I think it points to issues within the team, a lot of which we've talked about on here. I've written about the disconnect, especially on defense, between the coaches and the players, and that's what it looked like on film to end the season. I don't know where the breakdown happened, and we've talked about it, so I don't want to rehash it. But I do think largely the arrow's pointing out up, but I do think you're right when you talk about, you look at the class of the AFC, and I think as well as the Patriots did overall, I think in free agency this past year, it just showed the end of the season again, and it was a lot like 2019, that the Patriots are paying the price for basically drafting horribly for about 5 to 7 years there.
Yep.
And like one draft and one free agency class is not going to make up for it. I mean, can they compete? Can they win, one off here and there against good matchups? Yeah, but they need to get a lot better across the board for them to compete.
Yeah, I agree with you. And again, look, there's absolutely zero excuse for Miami and Indy. I just thought that was awful. And, then you had the kind of like fraudulent, smackdown of Jacksonville, which made you feel like, okay, well, maybe they're trying to get their ducks in a row. That was the quote unquote get right game. And then they went to Miami and stunk up the joint. So it was a disappointing ending. But as you said, big picture, the arrow's pointing up. Let's get to Greg Bedard now, who has to say his piece about Josh Allen. And I was looking at the notes before we started this podcast. And if you forgot who I am, Nick Cattles, I'm back. Glad to be back. You have changed your tune, I believe, Greg, about Josh Allen a little bit here. It's time for you to, as you put it, I think the word is surrender. So surrender, sir.
I surrender. I bend the knee, what have you. Mr. Allen, you have achieved elite status. What we saw on Sunday night, like, I am not a fool. I am not an ignoramus. I am not too proud to, admit, I wouldn't say the error of my ways, because I don't take back any of my assessments to Josh Allen to this point. I think he, like I said before, and why I hadn't put him in elite status, I viewed him very much like Andrew Luck, which certainly capable of great moments. And he led his team to an AFC Championship game at Gillette, where, he and the Colts fell apart, similar to the Bills in Kansas City last year. And I thought that after 2 years, he was not a good quarterback. And if I were the Bills, I would have at least, drafted a guy, maybe second, third round, to give myself options. I'm also one of those guys who would draft a quarterback every other year, because I don't think you can go poor drafting quarterbacks and selling them if need be.
Right.
Year 3 was unprecedented improvement in the NFL, and I wasn't ready to buy in. And quite frankly, I don't think he was elite last year. I think that what you saw down the stretch in the playoffs, if the Colts had a quarterback other than Phillip Rivers or even Carson Wentz, somebody who was capable of quarterback, the Colts beat them in the first round in Buffalo.
I agree.
The game was there for the taking. The divisional game, he tried to give it away, got lucky there, and then finally caught up with him in Kansas City. And then this year, he was very up and down. He was not anywhere close to the MVP of the league halfway point. The Bills were not winning because of him. And he was still making a lot of the same mistakes. And then, and I think we talked about it on here, they had the win game against the Patriots. He could have, if he was great, he would have made a play to win that game. He didn't. Okay. Go to the next week. They fall behind 24-3, I think it was, to the Bucs at halftime. And you're just like, and he was part of the issue through a bad interception or two in that game. And you're just like, it's the same Josh Allen. And then the second half against Tampa, watching that, to me, was the most impressive stretch of football I had ever seen Josh Allen play. He basically took the team on his back. And I think the Bills realized some things too. And I think that second half proved to Dayball and Sean McDermott that, you know what, we can put more on his plate. We don't have to worry about him, throwing the game away or, making the big mistake, because he stopped doing that. That was the biggest thing to me. He still makes the same Josh mistakes. Like even on Sunday, he had the fumble that bounced right back to him. And it was one of those typical plays where he gets into trouble, then he starts to back out of it, and he's not holding on to the ball, and they swiped at it. And if the Chiefs recover there, I might not be giving in, but it bounced right back to him. There was late a throw behind Cole Beasley that was almost picked off. There was a check down to Singletary from like a yard away where it was almost a complete disaster. So he still has those plays, but here's the difference with Josh Allen now and why he has ascended to elite status for me. He takes the easy plays now. He didn't used to do that. He will take the checkdowns and be happy with 8 or 9 yards. His running ability, which they've encouraged now, probably takes some of the plays away where he might force something.
Yep.
And make a big mistake. So you combine all those things, and now he is a much better product where Josh Allen is elite. He's going to be trouble for the Patriots. It's one of these off seasons now where Bill Belichick and his staff need to sit down and they say, all right, look. And I think Bill recognized this too. I think Bill and I were in alignment on how we felt about Josh Allen for a long time, probably until the Gillette game this year. And Bill went into the Bills locker room, probably largely to go in there to tell Josh Allen, and we heard Josh Allen, basically told him like, we couldn't stop you and stuff like that, even though a lot of that had to do with the Patriots and their current constitution. But, I think Bill bent the knee also going to the locker room and saying that he's like, you know what, you're no longer the same guy. And, hats off to you. So I think Bill realizes now, I'm going to have to figure out in the offseason how we're going to match up with the Bills and Josh Allen because he's not going away. He's now elite. He's big trouble, and he's the best quarterback we've ever faced in the AFC East. And it's going to cause us a lot of thinking and scheme development and personnel decisions because they're going to need to stop that guy.
Yeah, I mean, Josh Allen has been really difficult to break down as somebody who watches a lot of football like you do, Greg. And, I've watched my fair share of football over the last few years. And he's been difficult because, as you said, he does have these up and down moments. And within games from week to week, I mean, even at the, towards the tail end of this year, everybody wants to point to the New England game, which I think is easy pickings because we saw it happen again in the playoffs. But against the Jets, he wasn't very good. Against the Falcons, he wasn't very good. Against the Jaguars, he was awful. So there are these games that he just looks bad. And there are plays that he looks bad. I think the difference is this. We've got to learn and adjust our point of view about quarterback play in the NFL. And what I think is happening here is the nature of the quarterback position has changed over the past couple of years, and guys are more willing to take risks, and guys are told to take risks, and guys who run the football and extend plays by their nature take more risks. There's not as many quarterbacks, stand in the pocket guys that we see. Like, even Mac Jones at the end of the year, one of the changes we saw was he was actually breaking contain a little bit and rolling out and making plays. He did it against Buffalo in the playoff game a couple of times. So I think what we have to learn now is that these players, these quarterbacks that are coming into the league, they are more willing to take on risk. And with that risk, they make some boneheaded plays. And even Mahomes at times makes boneheaded plays. I mean, last year, I think he had like 15 to 18 interceptions dropped. Let's not forget that for like a full month and a half this year, he wasn't very good. So I think even the best of the best, the way they play the game now opens themselves up for error. And so we have to adjust what we see as an elite quarterback. Elite quarterbacks nowadays, they will make mistakes that we didn't see elite quarterbacks make as often years ago. It just kind of goes with it. And the more that Allen runs and the more that he's given the, right to run that offense and extend plays like he does, he's going to make some stupid plays. And I agree with you. I thought there were 2 or 3 of them against the Chiefs, especially that pass to Singletary, just a disaster. I think it was supposed to be a screen. He should have thrown it at the feet of the running back or straight down into the ground. And he still tried to complete the pass, which he miraculously did, but it didn't end up being a turnover. That's one of those plays where you look back and if he makes it, if he doesn't make it and it's a turnover, you go, oh my God, there's Josh Allen again. That's just going to be part of his game. The one thing I will say before we jump to a couple of other things we want to discuss today, especially Mac Jones, and the Patriots and what they need to do to combat the Bills and everything. Josh Allen is elite. Sean McDermott, it doesn't sound, Greg, like you're ready to bend the knee for Coach McDermott.
No, and look, I've sort of fluctuated on Sean. I've always had a great deal of respect for him and the way he's gone about his career and how he's built his career and built the Bills with Brandon Beane. I knew as soon as they got hired there, I was like, that's a good combo that they got going up there in Buffalo, and that's come to fruition. Now, I don't love McDermott, his sideline antics, and all he does is complain about officiating after every play, or he's running over to pick up Josh Allen, but mostly is bitching at the officials. It drives me crazy. But what happened at the end of the game with the Chiefs, to me, that the Bills lost that game leading with 13 seconds left, it's solely on Sean McDermott.
Yep.
He lost the game for the Bills. You have to. Everybody knows it. This isn't hindsight. Anybody who knows anything about football knew in the moment that when it came to it, you're thinking, all right, well, they have to kick the ball and play. And, either you squib kick it or you pop up a kick around probably like the 10-yard line where you make them, well, if they're under orders of fair catch, fine, fair catch it at the 10-yard line. If no time runs off the clock and they're at the 10-yard line, you're okay. But most coaches would have squib kicked it and made them run 3 or 4 seconds off the clock, where you're only getting, you might not get 2 plays, and they certainly wouldn't be the ones that they just dealt with, that the Tyreek Hill and then the Travis Kelce play. If you get it if they have it with 9 seconds left, now they need to probably go to midfield from about the 30, say. They need to pick up at least 25 yards. They probably only have time for 1 play, really, and you can defend it differently. So that to me was a complete coaching blunder. I don't like how he's just said something about execution. The kicker didn't look like he had any thoughts about popping up the ball. He just kicked the crap out of it. He's the head coach. He's in charge of that. And then, even with what happened, he took a timeout before each of the plays that the Chiefs ran. Great. Get on the same page. How does that not entail paying special attention to Tyreek Hill, number one, and Travis Kelce? How are you not bumping the guy? How are you not doubling Tyreek Hill? How are you not, whatever? But to set up your defense, and that's the head coach's responsibility, don't leave it on the coordinator, not in that circumstance. For them to just be bad on 3 consecutive plays to end the game and keep the team from going to AFC Championship game, to me, it's 100% on Sean McDermott.
I agree with you. I thought it was a collapse by the coaching staff, and Leslie Frazier also needs to be brought into this thing where, I know there's questions about rushing 4 at that point in the game. Is it necessary to rush 4 guys? And some of the other things that they did, the squib kick was the most obvious, but yeah, I mean, and that's, it drove me crazy about the overtime thing. People were throwing it out there about the coin flip. Listen, I know the overtime rule isn't great, and, could we try to tweak it to make it better? Sure. But don't give up a 75-yard touchdown drive in under a minute. Don't give up a 44-yard field goal drive in 13 seconds to push it into overtime. And then the last time I checked, when they flip the coin, they don't then turn to the team that wins the coin toss and say, congratulations, you just won this football game. You can actually go out there and play defense and try to force them into a field goal and not give up a 75-yard touchdown game-losing drive. So I just think the overtime conversation and the coin flip conversation bails out the defense. And we need to talk about, hey, look, you do have an opportunity to not give up a touchdown in overtime and get the football back and win the game. And Buffalo's defense, which was, I think, the number 1 scoring defense in football this year, they fell apart in the final 3 minutes. That's just what happened. And that's on Frazier and that's on McDermott. I see a lot of people tweeting out, and I think the general reaction after that Chiefs-Bills game was, holy crap, the Patriots are well behind those 2 teams. And immediately, because this is the way it works in football, people look at the quarterback. Greg, to you, is Mac Jones the reason why the Patriots can't compete right now with the Bills and or Chiefs?
No, not even close. I mean, and I don't know how people who have watched the Patriots over the years, and specifically Tom Brady, uh, can look at that and come away with that conclusion. I mean, look, Tom Brady later in his career, could throw the ball really well, manipulate the pocket, but we all know his competitiveness and his mind were really what set him apart. He didn't have the biggest arm in the world, wasn't as elusive as a lot of people, probably not even as elusive as Mac Jones. But and look, I'm not saying that Mac Jones's arm strength is even the same as Tom Brady's early in his career. I think it would be an interesting argument. I think it's pretty close. But no, I don't think that Mac Jones is part of the issue. I think you got to remember Mac Jones was a rookie. Okay, everybody needs to slow down. I mean, what was Patrick Mahomes doing as a rookie? He was sitting behind Alex Smith.
Right.
Okay, what was Joe Burrow doing as a rookie? Well, he got hurt and he was decent before that, but he wasn't lighting the world on fire. He certainly wasn't in the elite quarterback conversation like he seemingly is now. Now that
Josh
he has
Allen.
Jamar Chase on the Josh Allen as a rookie was a complete disaster. So we can keep going through it. So he was a rookie. He basically was going nonstop from the national championship, Alabama season, all the way through this season. He's barely had a break. Probably hasn't had much time to hit the weight room and all that stuff. I think Mac Jones is just fine. I think his arm strength is fine. There haven't been many times, a few times, and I wonder about him in the wind. But again, he's a rookie where I'm like, all right, maybe that's a little bit iffy. But there were, the game in Buffalo, not the game in Buffalo. Yeah, the playoff game in Buffalo. I'm sorry. I thought Mac Jones played really well in that game. I was
agree with
really
you.
encouraged by what he did.
Yep.
I mean, that throw to Nelson Aguilar 9 times out of 10, it's a touchdown, or at least it's just knocked away. The safety made a tremendous play, but it's 0 degrees outside, and he put it on the button from about 45, 50 yards away. There were other throws. His first throw of the game was on the other hash mark, and he throws a comebacker to Kendrick Bourne. That's an NFL level throw. It's not somebody with a pop gun arm. Will it get better? Yes. I've covered guys. Like, I remember covering Matt Flynn with the Packers, who went on to sign a big money deal with the Seahawks, got, taken over by Russell Wilson.
Yep.
But you want to see a quarterback without an NFL level arm? That's Matt Flynn. That's Chad Pennington towards the end of his career after his shoulder surgeries and things like that. Mac Jones is not those guys. Mac Jones can make every NFL throw. Can he get better? Can he get probably 20 to 25% better on those over, as he ages in his career? Yeah. To me, the Patriots falling behind in the AFC is not about the quarterback. And I hate people making it the NBA. Well, you need this guy, you need that guy. Well, Patrick Mahomes doesn't win all the time. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen doesn't win all the time. He can be defensed by the Panthers and the Falcons and the Jaguars. Why? Because they're faster on defense. And They can, at times can cover people and can get after the quarterback. So to me, this is about, like you said, I think that the when you look at the NFL game, what you have to understand is what happens in college is going to come to the NFL eventually.
Yep.
I don't watch very much college football. I know Nick probably watches a lot more. But since when do quarterbacks dominate the college game? They don't. What dominates? Talent and the ability to get off the field once in a while. Georgia won that national championship game because they have a lot of weapons and they have some good guys on defense, fast guys on defense, and they were able to stop Alabama enough times. That's what the game is. And so to me, when you look at it, the Patriots don't have enough viable weapons where you can spread them out or scheme it where the defense has to cover these guys and make it easier for the offense. That's what makes your offense unstoppable. That's what made the Bills unstoppable, not Josh Allen. It was the emergence of Gabriel Davis and Cole Beasley and Dawson Knox and Isaiah McKenzie, along with Stephon Diggs. You put all those guys out there, what the hell's the defense supposed to do? Somebody's going to be open to get or at least somebody's going to have a good matchup.
Yep.
Why did San Francisco beat Aaron Rodgers, one of the greatest quarterbacks that we've ever seen? Because they had a good defense that could generate negative plays and cover the Packers. And so to me, the Patriots right now, their issues are about not enough weapons, to make the defense respect them and make them tougher to defend, and not enough speed and cover guys, and guys just can create negative plays on defense. You up the Patriots talent level in those areas, and I don't know how long it's going to take, but you up their ability in those areas, and the Patriots are right there with any of them with Mac Jones.
I agree with you. I mean, look at all the teams that are left, right? I mean, the Rams, they go out and they get OBJ to help with all the other weapons that they already had. You look at the Niners, not a good offense. Like Jimmy G is not good. We stop with the Jimmy G. All he does is win stuff. Yeah, all he does is win when his special teams comes up with 4 miraculous plays in a playoff game, when his defense is playing out of their minds, when they can run for 200 yards. Yeah, he wins because he stays out of the way long enough. But they have Deebo Samuel, who to me is one of the best offensive players in football. When you look at, obviously, the AFC, Jamar Chase going to the Cincinnati Bengals changed that offense, even though I still would have liked them to pick an offensive lineman, and their O-line is trash, and they gave up 9 sacks last weekend. They still have Chase. And we all
they would have lost.
Happens.
And by the way, they would have lost to any team with a decent quarterback and not Ryan Tannehill being god awful.
100%. And when you look at the Chiefs, we know what they have. They've had it for a few years now. So, yeah, you've got to up the level of talent. And that's going to be the chore for Belichick, which we'll get into in a minute with the member question of the day. I do think a lot of that's going to come from the draft. I don't think we should expect spending spree after spending spree. Last offseason, I think, will be the anomaly because it was a must. So it's going to have to come through the draft. And, you mentioned college and how it sets the stage for the NFL in moving forward. Nick Saban, and I know you put this quote in the notes for us today, but I remember him saying this on the field, and I remember talking about it in my show, during my show in Virginia Beach. And he said, look, it used to be that good defense beats good offense. Good defense doesn't beat good offense anymore. It used to be if you had a good defense, other people weren't going to score. You were always going to be in the game. I'm telling you, that ain't the way it is anymore. And so Saban sent the message across the bow to, I think, the NFL, saying this is where we're headed. And look, the NFL's not going to change it. They're not going to get in the way. They love offense. Did you see the ratings over the weekend? They're getting huge ratings. Fantasy football is as popular as it's ever been. They know it's all about the quarterback and it's all about the offense. If you think the NFL is going to all of a sudden reverse field and give us defensive rules that'll help the defense, that's just not going to happen. So you've got to have offensive skill positions, and you've got to have speed. And I keep saying that word. I've said it for 2 years. I'm getting irritated. I'm going to tip the table over. This team needs speed. Bill Belichick, speed. If you look at every team that makes a run, they have speed. And the Patriots don't have enough of it. All right, let's get to the picks this weekend quickly. I want to let you know that Greg was 2 for 2 last week, straight up. He was 2 for 2 against the spread. For the playoffs, he's 8-2 straight up. He's 7-3 in the playoffs against the spread. I did not do, for my show here in Sacramento, I didn't do the spread, but I did do straight up, and I am, let me see, 7-3 straight up. I was 6-0 the first week. I was 1-3 last week. Let's go to Bengals at the Chiefs. Chiefs giving 7, Greg.
Yeah, that's a big number. I mean, I know it's in Kansas City. I haven't looked at the weather report, so I'm not sure what it is. I think that's a bit of a big number. The Bengals defense is not something that I've been enamored with. Have they played this season?
Yes. The Bengals just beat them like 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, you were right. 34-31.
Beat them.
That's right.
Cincy. Yeah.
As you saw, high scoring. I'm not enamored with either of the offenses. But I think that Burrow being, relegated to the pocket, really helps Spagnuolo. I think, we didn't see Spagnuolo, the Chiefs defensive coordinator. It's funny because my son had a hockey game, the night of the KC game and the Bills game. And so I was listening to it a lot on radio, and I was telling my wife and son, I'm like, watch, Spags is going to zero blitz here. It's going to be, and he never really did that.
Yeah.
And because of Josh Allen, I think he's just afraid, and they couldn't cover everybody. If they did zero blitz, somebody was going to be open. But I think that's back in the arsenal for KC in this game. I think he looks at the 9 sacks and says, I'm just going to come after them. I'll figure out, we'll double chase. That's what the Titans did and largely took care of them. And like I said, the Bengals should have lost last week if Ryan Tannehill was just average in that game. and the Titans didn't have that awful 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 sequence with the read option and then the Henry run, and also over relying on Henry in that game. But I think that I think Patrick Mahomes found something towards the end of the season. I thought in the playoffs he's for a long time, he back to last season, he was dealing with the turf toe and he really wasn't himself. And it took a large portion of this season. But I think, the stretch that we saw against the Steelers when they had an outburst for basically like 30 something points. And then this past week, I think he's back to being unstoppable. I don't like the Bengals. I don't like their defensive scheme. And I think Spags will go over them. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I think they're going to win big in this game. So I am. What am I taking the points? Or
you're giving the points.
I'm giving the points. Yeah, you know more about this stuff than I do. I'm giving the points. I think the Chiefs win by double digits, like 10 to 14 points.
I mean, I was going to say Chiefs by 10 to 14. You pretty much took everything out of my mouth. So Spagnuolo, I think, is going to blitz. He's going to be aggressive. As I said, Cincinnati, I think, gave up. They were in the bottom 5 sacks given up this year. The offensive line stinks. It stunk last year.
Mm-hmm.
It stinks this year, maybe even worse than last year. The only reason why the Bengals won that game, as you said, was Ryan Tannehill. Look back in history. How many teams win when their quarterback gets sacked 9 freaking times? I did the math. I think on my show this week, I did the math. So 80 yards. The Bengals had to drive 80 yards for 9 points in that game because of all the field position that Tannehill gave them. They had like a 39-yard drive, a 22-yard drive, and like a 15-yard drive or something like that to get 9 points. And then they had one Jamar Chase catch for 57 yards, which set up another field goal. So when it's not Chase killing you deep and it's not, turnover after turnover, I think the Chiefs will get after Burrow. I think he'll make some plays. I think he'll also give up some plays and throw a pick or two. And I don't believe in the Cincy defense, especially on the road against Mahomes. So give me Chiefs 10 to 14. 49ers at the Rams. Rams minus 3.5. And the interesting backdrop to this game, Greg, is that Kyle Shanahan has beaten Sean McVay. I think it's now 6 straight times. If they win on Sunday, it would be the 7th straight time that San Francisco has beat LA. How do you feel about this one with the Rams given 3.5?
Yeah, tough to beat a team 3 times in a year. I think that while I do not love Matthew Stafford, and I did think he played, well for him last week against the Bucs. I don't think he'll be as good in this game. I just, I don't like Jimmy against this kind of pressure, against some of the coverage that the Rams can generate. And what is the spread? It's 3.5.
Yep.
So I'm gonna take. Am I laying the points? I'm gonna go with the Rams by a field goal. They don't cover the 3.5.
No, so you're taking the points.
You're taking
the. If you were taking the Rams, you're laying the points. You're giving the points.
Okay.
Yeah. I think. What'd you say? Rams by a field goal?
Yep.
Yeah, I hate you. I was going to say the same damn thing. I swear to God, we're right on the same page. I thought, I picked the Niners. I picked the Rams last game. It was week 18. These teams just played in week 18. And the Rams got out to like a 17-zip lead. And the Niners defense stepped up and they played better. And somehow, some way, the Niners were able to create some offense with Deebo Samuel in the run game. And they came all the way back from 17. And it went into overtime. A bunch of crazy things happened in that game. I do think the Niners defense will keep this close, but I think the Rams are just too talented. And I think OBJ is better than he's ever been over the last 2 or 3 years. I think getting out of Cleveland did him wonders. And I just think the Rams will end up winning, but I think they do win by a field goal. I think it'll be a tight game. I think it'll be a physical game, but give me the Rams by 3. BostonSportsJournal.com member question of the day. BSJ, $39.99 on the annual plan. Not only do you get top-notch analysis of all the Boston Pro sports, I was going to say there's our graphic right there. Nice little graphic at the bottom. But if you're a Patriots junkie, and if you're listening to this podcast, you are. A membership at BSJ gives you access to a ton of video analysis that Mr. Bedard does on coaches film and direct access to them in weekly chats. Greg, we've got about 2 minutes Do we have confidence that GM Belichick can restock this roster through the draft, free agency, and trades? Based on his performance over the last 6 years, I have my doubts. And who is I? I is Dr. Doug 49.
Well, Dr. Doug, who he comments a lot on BSJ. I would say that he tends to come from the pessimistic side of things. Just to put that out there. I think that there's a couple of factors that come into play with this Dr. Doug. I think that number one is Dave Ziegler still here because he is a strong candidate for the Raiders.
Yep.
That could also mean Josh McDaniels. And just to give people a quick update there, the last I have heard, McDaniels is still in sort of fact-finding mode on that. Obviously, the Raiders hire, and they're still going through a bunch of interviews. I think they're having Todd Bowles in tomorrow. I think the Raiders. They've been talking to everybody, GM, coach, whatever.
They better ask Bowles how he could leave a safety one-on-one against Cup at the end of a playoff game. Anyway.
Yes. Well, he'll be better than Gus Bradley, that's for sure. But you know, I if Ziegler gets the job in Vegas, let's just say, even putting McDaniels aside, it puts them into sort of a pickle. They don't have any ready guy there. There's, Matt Groh and Steve Cargill and there's some other Brian Smith, guys who have been there a while who could, step up. I don't think any of them are ready for that role. There has been increasing whispers that if something happens, maybe one of their former executives, like a Scott Pioli, wants to get back into the mix and could be back. I think that's the best case scenario for the Patriots. But if Ziegler stays or they get somebody that is strong-willed and will stand up to Belichick and have a strong opinion, then I think they have a good chance to keep going. Now, is it going to be 1 year? I just want to see. Look, they took a step this year. They did.
Yep.
And they, there's more talent in spots than there were a year ago. They need to take another step this year. Some guys who's not going to be back, who is going to be back. All of stuff that we will get into on the pod as we progress during the off season. We don't rush things. We don't try to, just throw things out there and just be like, oh yeah, Nelson Aguilar, this or that. No, we're in the process of reviewing the team and grading the team, and then we'll go from there ahead of free agency, and we'll take it slow, and we'll make sure that you get realistic and accurate information here on the pod. But they need to take another step, and they need to keep layering these drafts. If they need another draft like they just had, where you get 3 contributors. They do that again this year. They get some of their injured guys, whether it's Cam McGrone or Joshua Bledsoe. If those guys can play and contribute, all the better. Bottom line is, with what we saw last year in terms of how they attacked free agency, and they might have to go more the trade route this year if they want to do some things, and the draft, I am encouraged that they are going in the right direction. So, and certainly Bill Belichick, over what he's done over 20 plus years, has earned a wide berth into terms of what he's doing. They went down after Brady left. We all knew that was probably going to happen. They took a step up this year. I'm encouraged, and I think they'll do it again this year. Take another step. Will it be enough? I don't know, but that's okay. It's a process, and I'm encouraged. And so, yes, I think Belichick is the guy to do that, or I'm certainly giving him more time to show us one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I think when people look at it, and I understand there's going to be impatience when you've had such success that the Patriots have had, but everybody's got to take a deep breath. And I know we saw the end of the season. Again, it was brutal. No excuse whatsoever. But, big picture wise, they've got a quarterback now. And if you look at some spots, they definitely improved. I thought Belichick's process, as I've read it, and as you've said, Greg, was different than it was in prior years. And the results shown themselves. They had a really good draft this year. So I think we should focus on that and say, hey, well, maybe he figured it out. Maybe the light went off and he has changed his ways and he is delegating more and he's believing in the people around him to make some of these decisions. And he's taking that information in differently than he did in past years. But big picture, I mean, people look at what happens to teams when they lose their quarterbacks. It's not an easy thing to come back from. I mean, even Indy
Mhm.
lost Rivers, and they had a drop off with Wentz. Look at what happened, to New Orleans this year without Drew Brees. Even though Brees wasn't great anymore, it still hurt them. Let's see what happens in Pittsburgh without Ben Roethlisberger. It's a very difficult thing to come back from losing a guy, and the guy that the Patriots lost was the greatest of all time. And to be back in the playoffs this year, no matter how the season ended, that's a win, because not many organizations would be able to flip and come back the next year and get into the playoffs after what happened with Brady. And so let's see if they can build on that. It's not to say that will allow Belichick to do whatever he wants the next 3-4 years. And if they suck, let's all be happy about it. That is not the point. Don't get it twisted. The point is we saw some gradual improvement this year. And I think people should take that as a good sign and see if they can build off of it. And if they can't, we'll criticize them. But I do think they made the moves and they got better, and we'll see if they can do it again this offseason. It's not easy in the NFL to go from where the Patriots were to out of the playoffs to back to the playoffs the very next year. And that's what they did. So we'll see if they can build it. Greg Bedard looks like a different guy. He's trim. He's looking good. He's lost, as he said, a 12-year-old from his body. You're looking great. And we're doing this podcast now coast to coast. The Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles is now officially coast to coast. One guy is on the East Coast, one guy's on the West Coast. I am so happy to
About
be
to
back.
hit by a huge storm on Saturday, by the way. So screw you, Cattles.
I will not bring up the weather. I will not anger people. I will not bring up the weather. But it's great to be back. He is Greg. I'm Nick. This was the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattle.